Hey everybody, it's Dan Mori with Staffing Monthly, and as we are focusing on the ever important topic of sales with this issue, I want to talk about one of the topics that I don't think there's enough information out there for, and that is the performance improvement plan. We all want to celebrate when we have salespeople that are absolutely crushing their goals. And when we're an organization and we're growing and we're hitting our goals, winning solves all, and we all relish in those good times when you can actually celebrate the wins and realize that you're growing and you're successful. However, most data out there suggests that only 25% of salespeople in the staffing industry actually hit their goals year over year. And that's a problem. That means literally 75% of the industry is probably struggling somewhere between mediocrity and failure, right? And that's not a fun place to be. You can't grow your agency with that sort of performance and production out of your sales team. And I don't think there's enough talk or content out there around how do you manage that. There's a lot of content on training. There's how do you make a great cold call. There is, email strategies. There's all the things that you can do to help your salesperson grow and be better. And there's some amazing trainers out there and content, including the Staffing Sales Summit that's coming up here in February 2025 in Orlando, which is the only event that is focused on staffing sales professionals and leadership. But outside of that, what do you do when you are faced with a sales performer that is not performing, when they're not hitting their goals? And I find in this industry that all too often, sales managers, owners, leaders, we hang on to those salespeople far too long and we let them underperform for far too long before doing something about it. And so I want to walk you through the system that I prefer, that I've seen the best results from. And I kind of want to share with you my mindset when it comes to dealing with salespeople that are underperforming. Now, first and foremost, I will tell you, I've been in the trenches. It happens to all of us. If you are in staffing sales, you are going to have a bad month. You might even have a couple of bad months back to back. That can happen. This industry does go through changes. There's, the recessions, there's, pandemics that we've all endured. There's structural changes in the way that clients buy. I get all of that. However, it is the responsibility of the salesperson to adapt to those changes quicker than most to get back on track. So if you're having a bad month or you're just in a slump, this doesn't really apply to that type of salesperson. This is really for the salesperson or really the manager of the salesperson that just can't seem to consistently drive growth. Okay. So we're going to talk about the performance improvement plan. So first and foremost, I don't like to see poor performance for 3 months or longer, right? 1 month, okay, we can probably work with something there. 2 months, that's my upper threshold. If I see it for 3 months, that's a real problem. That's indicative of an underlying problem that needs to be addressed. Any longer than that, and you're seriously doing damage to the organization. Okay. So this is, I guess I should talk about the two reasons why I think this needs to be addressed quickly. So first and foremost, if you allow somebody to underperform, you're actually enabling that behavior, that outcome. You're almost setting the standard that that's okay, right? And you're allowing that mediocrity into your organization, and that is something that once it takes hold, you cannot get rid of, right? So you really got to make sure that you're motivated and on top of making sure that mediocrity doesn't take hold in your organization. The second reason is that it signals to all of your other top performers, maybe in the recruiting side of the house or other salespeople that are top performers, that you don't necessarily value their production or you appreciate their top production. And for them, it causes them to think, what am I doing here? Because top performers like to be around other top performers and they can tell when poor performers are bringing the organization down. And when they see management not take an active approach in dealing with that poor performance, they don't like it. They don't want to be part of it. And sometimes they might not voice their concern. They might either slow down their own progress because they're getting apathetic, or they might start looking elsewhere. Okay. So if you want to protect the organization as a whole and you want to create this culture of accountability and this culture of growth-driven mindset, you have to address poor performance respectfully and be intentional about it. So here's how I do it. First and foremost, if I see somebody struggling, even if it's for a month, I'm going to look at the data and find out why. I'm going to really identify where in the process are they deficient? Are they doing less quantity of prospecting, right? Maybe their calls are down, their emails are down, their visits are down, their prospecting activities in general, maybe it's down. And their conversion rates throughout the rest of the process are the same, and it really is just a productivity issue on the front end, and I'm going to look to address that. If maybe that activity is on par and their conversion rates are down, I'm going to try to figure out, is it a training issue there? I'm trying to identify where in the process it is. Maybe their conversions from meetings to proposals or proposals to contracts are down. I'm going to look to figure out where that is in the process and do some spot training before I get to a PIP, right? Try to coach them up to get out of it. If we can't fix it, right? If we go through some of those things, some of those kind of those troubleshooting and spot training things for after a month or 2 months and it really can't fix it, this is how I am going to structure the PIP or performance improvement plan. First and foremost, I make it about the role, not the person. Okay. We typically, if we hire someone and they're working for us, you got to believe they're a good person, right? And we don't want to necessarily attack or alienate or ostracize the person, but sometimes the person isn't right for the role. So when I am having this conversation with a producer, I focus on the role and the production that the role is not producing for the company, right? And I keep it on the role side of things, to try to be as respectful and sensitive to the situation as possible. So I will sit down and say, hey, we need to have a talk. For this organization, this sales production role that we have in this market needs to produce X. And all I'm sharing with them is what the known standard of production is. And if they don't know that, that's a problem. That's a leadership thing that you can improve. Every salesperson should understand what the goal is and what the minimum standard of good is, right? So in that moment, it's like, hey, this role for this company needs to produce X. Unfortunately, over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, we're seeing it only produce Y. And that gap, that difference between the two is causing issues for the company, and we need to correct it. Together, we need to create a plan that's going to improve performance. Okay. First thing that you have to get with a salesperson is they have to understand where the production actually is, right? You want to get a salesperson in this moment that says, okay, yes, I understand where good is. I see where the standard production or the actual performance is actually coming in at, and I understand it's a problem, right? What you're looking for as a leader is someone that can actually own the deficiency, someone that takes a sense of personal responsibility and they are going to put their all into trying to correct it. That is the right mindset going into it. If at this point of the conversation, the salesperson starts giving you all of the excuses and they start saying, well, it's not me, I don't have good leads, or recruiters are this, or this salesperson is that, or the market is hard. They start giving you all of these reasons that are justifying poor performance, and they're doing zero accountability. They're accepting zero responsibility for the results. This is a red flag problem. Okay. I understand that sometimes there are external factors, and if they can present those while accepting responsibility, that's okay. Right. But if you see someone that is deflecting responsibility and they're blaming everything else, it really doesn't matter what you're going to do. It's probably not going to work. Okay. Because as salespeople, if you want them to be productive, they need to accept responsibility for the current situation and they need to own it and they need to understand what's required to actually correct it. And they got to be willing to do the work. And it's going to be hard, and sometimes work is hard, right? That's just the nature of things. So once I get there, like that's the first thing that as a leader I'm looking for is what level of ownership do they have over this? What level of responsibility are they taking and how much commitment are they putting forth to solving it, right? So the next part, I'm going to lay out a plan, okay? Because if somebody is failing, it's for one of two reasons. It's either the organization has not supported them in a way to set them up for success, or they're just not the right person for the role, right? And we have to figure out which one that is, because if they're the right person and it's the organization's fault and you haven't set them up for success and you cut them loose or you let them go, you're missing out. And that's a huge miss on your part as an organization. So we have to check that right there. So the PIP, the performance improvement plan, is just as much about improving the performance of the sales rep as it is about understanding, is the organization doing enough to set that salesperson up for success, right? Because let's be honest, I've seen a lot of staffing agencies out there not put their salespeople in the best position for success. not give them the right system, not give them the right tools, not give them the right support. And they just expect them to go out and move, heavens in the earth to make magic happen. And it doesn't work. It's a team sport, right? So the PIP is just as much about the organization getting itself in check and understanding, are you doing what's required for success? And then is the salesperson the right person for the role, right? So during this PIP, where you're going to have a controlled environment, we're going to have a very prescribed plan. And it's going to start in one of two areas. We're going to have a known ICP, ideal client profile. When we're doing a PIP, we want to make sure we're doing everything that is going to stack the deck in our favor. That's going to give your salesperson every edge for success as possible, right? And that starts with making sure that the list of prospects they're calling on are going to be the very best, right? So you want to make sure that it is close to your best prospect as possible. So you're going to basically fill your entire list chock full of ICPs, ideal client profiles, right? And I like to actually pick two profiles, unless you're a niche agency and you only service one vertical, pick a couple, right? Just to make sure that we actually protect against any sort of seasonality or, cyclical variance in the industry. So let's say that you are a skilled labor staffing agency, right? And you're like, hey, we are going to pick engineering firms and we're going to pick construction companies that might deal with project managers, right? We're going to those are the two that we're going to focus on, right? So that's your ICP, and you'll build your parameters. What are the geographies that you're going to be calling into that you've had the best success in filling? What are the roles? If you've not seen my stuff on, the standard of good, right, where you actually identify what are the two or three industries you're best equipped to serve, and then what are the three roles within each to create your kind of 3x3, or what I call your 9x client matrix, right? You want to define that. And that's the first step. Make sure that they're starting from the right spot. And then you're going to set them up with a data tool. This can be something like ZoomInfo or Seamless or something like that, where they're getting good contact data. Maybe you've already built this and you've got your database, full of it. Amazing. If not, make sure they're getting all of the good contact data for these people, the company names, contact names, contact role, address, email, all that stuff, mobile phone number, all of it, LinkedIn URLs. Get it organized. All of this right here should take no more than a few hours, maybe a day, and just organizing all of this piece of it. And you want to fill this up. And I will tell you, for this targeted plan, and we're going to get through the actual cadence in a second here, for this targeted plan, you're going to want this to have anywhere from 100 to 300 prospects in it. Okay. And I know some people out there might be like, hey, we want to be targeting more. For the type of PIPs that I do, I'm in the 100 to 300 range. The reason there's a range, if you're a staffing agency and you rely a lot on, walk-ins or drops or that activity where you're out in the field, those take longer. So you can actually prospect less people, right? If you're in a niche industry, you might actually have less prospects available. Okay. So I'm going to be in that range. So that's where they're starting from. And again, day one, this is their responsibility. They have to understand the ICP and they have to create these lists. And on this list, they should have a good indication of, are they using a staffing agency or not already? And you can figure this out. Talk to your recruiters. They usually know. If not, you can do some resume database searches for the client name, and you might see if they're using staffing agencies. There's some ways to figure this out. But you want to try to indicate that. If you can't, it's not a deal breaker, but if you know that going into it, it is a little helpful. It gives you a little bit of an edge. But once you create this, the next thing is to create the actual campaign, right? The targeted campaign that you're going to run these 100 to 300 prospects through. With this, what I want to do is I want to have hyperactivity level. I want to make sure that we're going to be touching as many of these prospects or all these prospects as many times as possible and in as many ways as possible over a 30 to 45 day period. I don't run PIPs longer than that. I'd like to settle in on the 30. Sometimes I go 45 depending on my sales cycle. If it's a little bit longer in an area or an industry, I will allow it. But I'm 4 to 6 weeks, right? If you can't get meaningful traction within 4 to 6 weeks, that's a problem, right? We just, in this industry, we just don't have, most of us don't have, sales cycles longer than that, unless you're very specialized and you're dealing with RFPs and MSPs and that process, right? But for the most of us, you don't have to rely on that. And even if you are in that world, there's still some business out there that you can get that is not RFP centric, that is not, dealing with large MSPs. Well, like Kim Henderson is going to be talking about how to sell and really grow your business through the MSP network at the summit. But if that's not you and you got to work with a sales rep that's underperforming, like you don't have to live in those areas. Like focus on the quick wins. Like let's get some clients in the door, get some headcount in the door, start filling orders. So 30 to 45 days, that's the window we're doing this in. And there is going to be an activity every single day, right? And it might be like, hey, day one, you're going to have to call all the prospects 1 through 100, and it's going to be a day of smiling and dialing and sending a follow-up email. Day two, you're going to be out in the field and you're going to go stop into 20 to 30 of them, that's a good route. Day three, stop into, numbers 31 through 60, right? So on and so forth. You'll structure this out, put emails in there, do some calls, text messages, SMS if you got the ability to do it, out of your software or something like that, whatever you're connected to. But make sure you're building this campaign out. Make sure you're doing your LinkedIn touches and your outreaches and you're hitting this way. I would also include, again, this is sort of like the Hail Mary. So you want to pull all the stops. If you want to do a mailer or a postcard, anything to get traction and activity in the door, right? So you're going to plan this campaign out. And then most importantly, you are going to have a goal. This campaign has to have kind of a, from an army term, a go, no go, right? So you have to know, hey, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? Ideally, this is going to be determined on what your typical client makeup looks like or what your average weekly value of headcount is and how much you need them to generate to justify that role, right? Because again, the performance of the position has to justify the position. And I don't mean just break even. Like you don't want to just be paying for this person to have a job. Like they have to produce multiples of ROI because there's overhead, there's support infrastructure, there's all those things that it takes to service them, to support the salesperson, service the orders and the clients they're getting, and the recruiters that service those accounts, to the overall overstructure of the organization, and profit. You have to make money. So there has to be multitudes, and you have to know what this looks like. It might be something like, hey, in this, 30 to 45 day PIP, you need to acquire 2 clients, 3 clients, 4 clients. Might need to be an order number. It might need to be a perm order amount. It might need to be billings booked. It might need to be headcount, created, like a net new headcount level. But you have to figure out what's right for you based on your typical, salespeople production and what you need to justify the role. Obviously, they're not going to make up their entire ROI in a 30 to 45 day period. However, it should correlate to, if you were to extrapolate what that production would look like over a year, like those numbers should be aligned. They have to know that goal. That you have to basically state that, say, we're going to do this amount of work. We're going to target these prospects because they're the best prospects we have. We're going to target them this way. The goal is to get X. If we get X, it is going to be considered success. If we do not get X, it will be considered failure. Are we clear on it? You have to be clear with your salesperson. And this entire process, they have to be bought in. I'll tell you that entire thing, a day, basically listing all your prospects out, getting all their contact information, planning out all of your prospecting steps, doing all of your routing to make sure you have efficient routes for your walk-ins and drops and things like that. One day, you as the sales manager, the leader, review the plan with them, make sure that they understand what is expected of them to do this plan, and then cut them loose. Let them go at it, basically support them, and then you're going to do minimum 2 check-ins. You're going to do a Monday morning before they get started, make sure in the right space, make sure they understand what's expected, make sure they report to you, hey, this is what my plan is this week. I have these prospects I'm hitting, I have these meetings on the books. They're going to tell you what you should expect to hear at the Friday meeting. And then you're going to have a Friday end of day meeting with them, and they're going to report how the week went and how everything went from that Monday morning meeting. And what you're looking for as the leader is, did it match up? If they said they were going to be doing X number of calls, emails, hitting certain companies, having certain meetings, are they telling you the results of those exact things in Friday, or are they telling you a different story? Ideally, they're telling you that those results, and you're getting some progress results, meaning like, hey, I prospected these companies, I set these meetings. I had these meetings that I told you I was going to have on Monday. We had them, and we've got these proposals out, right? That's what you're looking for, progress in that follow-up meeting. And it is your job to press them in that Friday meeting and say, tell me more about this. Don't just go through the motions. Don't just follow the lip service like it's a typical check-in. Don't let them off the hook that easy. Again, this PIP is not only about the salesperson's performance, it's about the organization doing the right things. And this is an amazing opportunity for you to actually create that culture of accountability. Does that make sense? Right? So you got to be doing these things because the goal is not just a documentation process so you can fire them, right? That nobody should be doing a PIP that way. We've got to get rid of that stigma in this industry, right? And in all industries. But if that's what you're using PIP for, is you're doing it wrong. If the goal should be to really improve this salesperson to make them perform at a level, because I promise you, it is easier to retain a salesperson and coach them up to performance than it is to replace them, right? It just is. So you should have their best interest in mind, and you should be looking to improve the organization to support your salespeople for success. So treat it accordingly. Go through this process, and you have to set the tone of accountability throughout this process because ideally they're going to be successful. And you don't want that tone of accountability to only live within the PIP. You want them to be checking in and understanding, what does work look like? What does reporting look like? What does progress look like? Right? What does winning look like? If you want to grow as an organization, you have to teach your people how to win and what it looks like, right? It's no different than professional sports. If you see those, if your team has ever gone through a rebuild and they bring in a new coach, a lot of times the hardest thing they have to do is actually teach the organization what it feels like to win, what is required to win. And this is no different, especially when you're dealing with a poor performing salesperson. So once you get to the end, this is not as black and white as the go no go looks like, because we've all been there. We've all gone through this, and it's like, hey, good is getting 4 new clients, and they're like, I got 3 clients signed, we got orders and headcount coming in, and we got 4 proposals out. And you're like, man, what do we do? Like, we got 4 proposals out, one of them's likely to hit and it would hit the requirement, but technically only 3 came in during the period of time. Like, I'm in that gray area, right? We've been there, we know what that's like. There's no right or wrong answer, right? This is a business decision. If you don't feel like they did enough to be successful for your organization, call it. It's okay to let them go, but if you feel like they did enough and that level of effort is going to be sustainable and they've got the right mindset and you think they can build on it and become a positive contributor for the organization, give an extra week or two. Say, hey, we're going to extend the PIP for a week or two just to see if these proposals come through and we can hit that success metric, because we're still holding true to that number. And that's how you extend it. Not indefinitely. You don't end the PIP as a positive note. You don't say, okay, well, we're going to give you a pass on this one, even though you did less than expected. Don't do that, because that sends the wrong message. You just say, hey, we think that you did enough work. We understand there's some things that are outstanding, so we're going to extend the time by a week or two. And your goal is to get these things to come in, but you're also going to start a new campaign, right? Because you want to see, can they sustain that level of work that got the results that you need out of that role, right? Because if they can only do it for 30 to 45 days, and then it's too much for them, if they can't meet that standard consistently, if it's just too much beyond their capacity, you're going to burn them out. And that's not fair to them either. So that's how I handle that situation. We basically will extend the time and give ourselves a little bit more time to hit the standard. But in the military, we had the saying, you train to standard, not to time. And a lot of times people will focus on the PIP being a timed event, which it needs to be time bound, but they forget that the standard is actually really what you're going for, right? So here we need to train to standard, not to time, and you never want to sacrifice the standard. So you say, hey, I'm going to extend by a week or two, hit the standard. That's what goal is. That's our success. If we hit it, then great. Remove the PIP. We'll continue forward at this pace. If we don't, then we're going to part ways. Okay. You have to be transparent with them. Don't be afraid to have that level of conversation with them. Sometimes as leaders, conversations are hard, right? That's just the way it is. Sometimes you have to have that tough conversation with people, but you can do it in a respectful way, right? And if they're a good salesperson or a good human being, they'll understand that the performance that they're putting out there does not match what the organization needs, right? And they won't be shocked, hurt, offended, and mad about that, right? If they are any of those things, you might have the wrong person, which leads me to the last thing I want to share in this video. If you have to let somebody go, it's okay. Remember, if you're a leader or an owner of a company, you're building an organization that has to stand the test of time. In order to do that, you need the right people within your company. And if you have any person that's not the right person or in the right role, that will only slow you down and increases your chances of failure or turbulence along the way. Okay. And trust me, if they're not the right person for the role, they feel it. They don't like it either. Nobody likes showing up to work and not hitting their goals. No one likes that, right? And if they do, then they're not the right person, right? Not in sales, not to grow an organization. So when you're looking at this right here, I look at it and say, hey, if you're not the right person, go find the job that's right for you. Go find the job that's going to actually allow you to shine and thrive and be successful and add more meaning and fulfillment to your life, because it's not this one. This role is not right for you, and liberate them. Because if you don't, if you keep them in that poor performing role way too long, you're holding them back. And it's not fair to your organization and it's not fair to them. So I would encourage you to liberate them from poor performance, let them go find, a role they can be successful in. I've seen it time and time again in my own company where we've had people that they weren't the right fit. We parted ways and we encouraged them and we said, hey, go do this or go try that or explore this. And we opened some doors for them and they landed in companies and opportunities that they were excellent at, that they thrived at. And as a leader, that's really what you should be trying to do for your people. And it gives you an opportunity to find the right person for your team. And trust me, your other top performers will appreciate that. They will appreciate you not hanging on to poor performers. So with that, I hope you found this video useful. If you like this sort of content, please consider subscribing to Staffing Monthly, to the Staffing Monthly YouTube channel, or consider going to the Staffing Sales Summit, where you can hear this type of content and all sorts of content related to sales producers, sales leadership, and really what you need to be doing to excel in staffing sales today. Thank you.